Welcome to That Sounds Terrific in the 585. Join hosts Nick Koziel and Christine Green as they spotlight the incredible leaders, visionaries, and innovators shaping Rochester and the 585 community. From transformative stories to big ideas, we celebrate the people making our community a better place to live, work, and thrive. So sit back, relax, and listen to what makes the 585 sound terrific.
Welcome to That Sounds Terrific in the 585 with Nick Koziel and Christine Green. Today we have Jess DeCotis, Don Simonetti Jr., and Jim Yakko. Welcome to the show. We are very excited to talk to you guys today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Nick, do you want to start us off?
Well, I mean, I think that it's kind of neat to have another sort of crossover here with Jess
Yeah.
coming on the show, and I know she knows these two gentlemen really, really well. So why don't we have Jess kind of kick us off? We'll do something a little different.
Yeah.
This time it's all about real estate. So, so if you were hoping for something a little different, not this time. So yeah, just a little bit about Jim and Don. Jim is the CEO of the Greater Rochester Association of Realtors, and Don Simonetti Jr. is the president of our board. And I am a director on the board for the association as well. And I really felt strongly that we needed to speak with 585 and the both of you, because it will, what they are doing, what the association is doing, is something that no other real estate association is doing right now. The Rochester area still is a seller's market. We are still in a quote unquote housing crisis. And what we are doing is we are at the forefront of making sure that we're actually proactively addressing that. A lot of community members think that realtors are just resting on their laurels and being like, well, the prices are going up and we don't care. But that is the opposite of what we're doing. It's the opposite of the truth. And Jim has been truly a change maker in this, and I really would love to get his story out and the Rock Reimagine housing story, so that way the community knows what we're doing and hopefully will take part, so that way we can just make more strides in getting our lawmakers to help us make the changes we need to get more housing for everybody. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim, if that's okay.
Sure. I can give you just a quick background of how the Reimagine Rock housing effort started, and then we can go whatever direction you want. Uh, every year in January, the association puts on an economic forecast breakfast event for our people in our industry. And a few years ago, as I was preparing for my talk about what to expect in the market, I just couldn't shake this feeling that there was something more going on with the lack of available homes for sale. And as I did some research, what I realized is this is a 20-year trend of declining number of homes for sale. And there are many, many reasons for it. We can go into them if you like. But what I realized is it seems like we've been sort of short-term coming up with justifications for this trend, but ignoring the longer-term trend. But the reality is fewer and fewer homes for sale, fewer and fewer opportunities for owner occupants, and it wasn't turning around. So absent any change on our part, I couldn't see how anything was going to improve. So we put together a group with the home builders, the mortgage bankers, and some other industry partners, and decided we were going to just really dig deep and find some of the causes, find some solutions, and then share the word with anybody who would listen. So that's what we've been doing the last 3 years. We put together a white paper that talks about the numerous inputs into why there is a crisis, 10 or 12 innovative ideas that might help us get out of it, and then have been sharing that as far and wide as possible. And we're getting there. The message has been sent. People now understand. And we're in the phase where people are coming to us and say, okay, so we want to solve this. What do we do? So now we have some options that we can give them some different ideas, and whatever works in your community.
it's interesting because like I know that I've shared this in the show before, but I'm participating in Leadership Buffalo, Leadership Rochester. I
Mhm.
did Leadership Buffalo too. Leadership Rochester, and it's come up multiple times in discussion with multiple leaders about the challenges of the housing in the Rochester area. You know, everything from people buying out like units and turning them into rental properties and having, I think we have one of the lowest percentages of like, you know, single family home ownership for like a city of our size in the country, and those types of things are all challenging. So when I heard like Jess is like, hey, we should have you guys on the show, I'm like, yes, I definitely want to learn more about it from your perspective. So I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, you know, the white paper and then maybe some of the challenges. And I didn't really give Don a chance to speak yet, so I want Don to be able to speak. So
Can
I just
I
want to throw
jump
it out
in
there. Yeah.
really quick? So I let's if you guys don't mind, rewind just a little bit. We touched on why we're in a housing crisis, or a little bit about the housing crisis, but I think some people don't really understand what that means. I mean, we've talked
Mhm.
about not as many people owning homes and availability, but not to get too in the weeds, but what is it like the average person's going, yeah, we're thinking of moving, and but we hear there's a housing crisis. What do you turn and tell that customer that really means?
So it really depends on your perspective. Um, as an agent, and I've been doing this for 27 years now, Jim is right. That slow trickle started to manifest itself 20 years ago. Um, I think it became more of a reality for agents representing sellers and buyers uh, probably shortly before COVID. And then COVID exacerbated it, where Rochester, the average agent was kind of looking at it and like, okay, inventory was low because of the pandemic, but then you started to see the list price to sale price ratios rising. So there's that piece. You have a lot of people who are aging in place because they don't have other options. So they're retrofitting their homes and aging in place in a manner that probably, you know, may satisfy their immediate need, but not protect their future interests long term. So that creates an issue in terms of uh, a housing need because that property is not opening up. You have, you know, a different generation of person that is now living back with their parents. You know, when you could work remotely, you know, you're moving back home because of the pandemic. And that has legs, you know. But when we started to see the list price to sale price ratios increase, and then we started to see the number of cash deals um, geometrically increasing year over year. That really cemented the issue of a shortage from the standpoint of the buyer's perspective, because the conventional buyer with 20% down, uh, you know, that would have been a gold standard next to cash 7 years ago, was losing deal after deal after deal after deal. You know, contingencies in the contracts that would be normal, uh, like an engineer's inspection,
Yeah.
low deposits, 5, 10, 15, 20% down. Um, those are all going away because if you're trying to buy a house with an inspection and you have 15 offers for one property, the seller has the luxury of taking what they want. In a normal market, there used to be kind of like a 1-to-1 ratio. For every listing that we had in the market, we had a buyer. I think Jim alluded to earlier that right now in Monroe County, we have 500 active listings, all of Monroe County.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
7 years ago, that would be at this time about 5,000. So depending on price point, depending on area, the list price to sale price ratio in terms of it going over list price is still hovering at about 15%. Okay. And buyers now are competing on a level that they were never competing before. So
Okay.
what Jim spearheaded a few years ago was this Reimagine Rock Housing initiative. And that's the impetus for why we are here. I don't know. Hopefully that gives you a little bit more context in
Yeah,
terms of the detail.
definitely. Thank you. And I'm sorry I kind of walked it back from where we were going, but I
No, it's
wanted
good.
listeners who maybe aren't in the market or haven't thought about it or thinking about it to get to really understand what it means to have a crisis. I didn't realize it until about a year and a half ago. I sat down with our good friend and real estate agent because we want to move, and there were lots of things we were shocked about, and we decided we couldn't do it, even though we're two working adults, and we can't do it. It's hard.
Yeah, and now more than any time ever, it is so important for a consumer to gain the expertise of a real estate professional that is in the field on the daily, that's understanding the nuances. And I know that, Jess and I speak to our buyers. Our needs analysis, Christine, that we do with a buyer now is completely different than it was 5 years ago. I'm going to have one with a client at 1:30 this afternoon that's coming in from Dallas, Texas, and they are enamored with our average price point north of $500,000. But I have to be the one to tell her that there are 3 pieces of inventory in the town that she's looking in between 500 and 700. And that is an education piece. That's a matter of perspective and aligning and managing expectations from the beginning in terms of reaching our consumer is vital.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah,
and
now,
Christine, just to
yeah.
follow up your question about the crisis. One of the things that helps people understand, Don mentioned COVID. When COVID hit and you went to the grocery store and there was no toilet paper on the shelf, you felt it. Like this was a crisis and you had no options. But with housing, it's different. If you live in a house or apartment, or you have stable housing, whatever type it is, you don't understand. But when you start talking about it to other people, almost everybody says, "Oh, yeah, I know somebody I work with who's been looking for 3 years and can't find anything. I know someone who's lost out on 26 offers. I know 10 people who have an adult child living in their basement." The stories just come at you. And once you kind of bring that to light, everybody knows at least one, usually multiple people who are not in the housing that they want. So we look at it as people are being forced to accept whatever housing they can get rather than what meets their needs. And so the only way to solve that is to create more options for them. And that's across the board, every market segment, every size, every location. We have to create choice for our neighbors. So as life circumstances change, I'm moving up, down, or sideways, I have more than one or two options, or I don't have to fight for 3 years to get the only thing I can get. That's what I think makes it a crisis. People don't have choice in where they live anywhere near what we should be providing them.
Yeah. Thank you guys really for clarifying that. Like I said, I have a little taste of it, but there are some people who just maybe not kind of, and I think it's important to educate. And of course, we want to know about Reimagine Rock Housing, right? That's why we're here. So anyone jump in, tell us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the core behind it is creating choice again. And the only way to do that is to create new housing. And our goal is not to tell people what to build, but just to kind of share this story that you have to create new housing. One of the biggest areas of shortage is in housing for independent active seniors. And many, many people are staying in the home that they've lived in for 10, 20, 30 years sometimes, because the options available to them are either really expensive. And if I'm, 70 years old, do I want to take a 30-year mortgage to get a $500,000 townhouse? so that I can, downsize? Probably not. So they stay where they are. And there's been numerous studies. Somewhere around a third of 3+ bedroom homes are occupied by empty nesters who use one bedroom. And there are thousands of young families out there looking for something a little bit bigger with a second or third bedroom, and they can't find it because they're being taken up by these empty nesters who don't necessarily want to be there. They want maintenance-free living. They want smaller scale. They want some community. They want to be able to just walk downstairs or through the hall and go get dinner. But we're not providing that option. My mom's been looking at one of those communities. She's been on wait list for 14 months to get into an independent senior community. And that's not abnormal. So picking apart each of the pieces, that's just one. We don't build condos here. We build very few townhouses. You talk to most towns in our area, and when you say you want more housing units in a smaller space, they get really panicky about traffic and about, oh my gosh, there's too many people. But those are the things that we're going to have to do to start creating more choice.
Absolutely. I have a friend who, and I don't mean to monopolize all of this, but I live on the west side out in Brockport, and I have a friend whose housing development suddenly has built many, many new houses to address this. And the long timers, they're not happy. Oh, look at all these people. Look at all these people. And I'm like, they got to live somewhere. I mean, they really, really do. So it's an interesting perspective.
It is. And you can understand the neighbors have an opinion, and they should, and it's their neighborhood. But it's a tough balance between people who have stable housing that meets their needs, who are fighting against new housing that other people need. And I don't have the solution to that, but we all moved into a neighborhood at one point, and we all lived in an apartment at one point. Apartments are not bad, but there's a lot of resistance to adding new apartment complexes. There's a lot of resistance to adding condo buildings or townhomes because there's more people per acre. And you can understand, but we have to figure out where we can create this housing because it's desperately needed. We don't want to have 30 and 40-year-old people living in their parents' basement if they don't want to.
Yep.
I just want to jump in on that too. It's not just that, people need housing, they do, but also it's good for the community. The bottom line, that the tax dollars that these communities will get will be substantial. And who doesn't want to pay lower taxes because you have more people paying in? I feel like a lot of it's called not in my backyard, NIMBYism. And we need a lot of yes in my backyards because we have the housing crisis. And also because, there's a lot of just wealth to be had for these communities, these towns that they're turning down for the sake of, how would we figure out traffic? Well, I don't know. Do a traffic study. I'm making kind of light of it and making it sound simpler than it is, but there are tools in the tool belt of communities to do these things. And I feel like if we just say, no, forget it, then we're going to be stuck for a very long time. So the Reimagine Rock portion of it, I feel like a very important part of it is to get more yeses, more, yeah, you know what, that does sound good. Yeah, that sounds great for my community. And Jim has done a study, probably several studies, but one I saw for my town. And it was fantastic looking at, the amount of dollars that Parenton would get from, one housing community was substantial. And the amount of people that would, then be housed and alleviate this housing crisis and, in turn, letting these people who millennials, a lot of millennials who don't have the housing they want, and then, the elderly community that wants to downsize could move. But yeah, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit to that, Jim.
Yeah, the study is available on our website, reimaginerockhousing.org. It was actually commissioned by the National Home Builders with Rutgers University. So this is an academically rigorous, well-studied or well-researched study. But we took an actual project in Perrington, and when you add in all of the cost inputs, all of the cost of services for this new housing, and you compare that to all of the revenue that comes in through property taxes, through sales tax, through people living in these homes, working in the community, shopping in the community, plus all of the jobs created by the construction, this development was 170 single-family homes, was projected to return $40 million over a 15-year period to the town. So that's almost $250,000 per single-family house. Similar project that was rental, was much smaller, but it was about $90,000 per house. So an additional 11 million. So this, 250 units was going to bring $50 million to the town over 15 years. And there's a perception that housing doesn't pay for itself because most studies just compare the cost of services with the additional tax revenue. And that's not the whole story. The job creation during construction, the spending in the community during construction, but also the people who live there. They support the schools, they support the businesses, they support the restaurants, they buy gas, they go grocery shopping. Most people do that close to their house. So it's a big shift in understanding the long-term benefits. And, Jess mentioned the traffic. With $40 million over 15 years, you could do a lot to alleviate traffic problems. And it's the challenge for us is the people who need the housing aren't coming out and fighting for it. The people who don't want the housing are. And so you go to a town board meeting and it could be 5, it could be 50, it could be 100 people speaking against it. But the people who desperately need it aren't the kind of folks who can take an evening out of their life and drive to another town and say, hey, I want this housing. So it's a challenge. The not in my backyard people tend to win out because they have a lot more energy.
I was going to ask about that because I feel like more and more often, and in this political climate, even you hear people are going to town halls that they don't live in and causing a huge stink about whatever the issue may be. So you're seeing a lot of that with this particular cause, like the groups are going from town to town trying to prevent any kind of change.
You do. It feels like there's some organization to it, which is just a little surprising. We owe it to our neighbors to help them. And, I could argue we're effectively preventing a whole generation of people from getting access to owner occupancy, starting to build wealth, building generational wealth, and creating stability in housing for them. And there are numerous studies that point to all of the social and health and beneficial aspects of stability in housing. It's not disputed. And yet when it comes down to voting to approve a project, there's so many negative voices. So we've been trying to provide a counter argument and say, listen, here's what it will do for these people. These are our neighbors who want something, and we just keep saying no. So we're trying to find reasons to give to a zoning board or planning board to say, here's why you should say yes to this project.
Mm-hmm. And I know that there's also some pushback from like low income home owners or renters wanting options and then seeing like their areas revitalized, but then those families are often priced out. And so I know that's also something that's being pushed back. And there is like, it was really strong in Buffalo, and I don't know how it is now, but I know that there was this, especially right after COVID, people like kind of buying up commercial properties, converting them to, apartments, and like there was a big influx of people living in the city. Rochester seems to have a few challenges around that especially when it comes to transportation and then like, the food deserts, right? So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about that, and maybe we can really get into like sort of the meat of what you're trying to do and some of the aspects of the problem.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest costs to new housing is infrastructure, water, sewer, electric. Electric is a whole problem unto itself. The grid is just not able to handle more power. There are projects underway that have been stopped because there's not enough power to power the homes. So the solution to that is let's build where there is infrastructure already in place. That tends to be the city, village centers, already developed areas. So commercial reuse of underutilized office or retail is great because they're built for density, they're built for traffic, and they have infrastructure in place. There are different challenges with rehabbing a strip mall for housing, and it isn't always as economic as it seems. But if that's where you can build, then we should be open to it. But it's people tend to say, go to Ogden. There's a lot of land out there, and you can build there. But that's really expensive because you have to extend water lines, you have to extend sewers. Sewers don't have capacity. It's really not as simple as just, well, there's land, so build a bunch of houses. We've been working very closely with the city of Rochester and trying to figure out what to do with the over 1,000 vacant lots that they have. There are buildings that are empty, that are really cool old buildings that need a little rehab, but could easily be converted to housing. In the city center, many old office buildings have been converted to high-end apartments, and that's going well. But we need to now branch out into the middle market, the lower market, and the solution to that is, some of it is subsidies, but some of it is just creating more options that will help moderate rents. When you only have 3 apartments to choose from, you kind of have to pay what they're asking for. But if we can add hundreds of apartments throughout the city, that eases that problem a little bit. But the gentrification is a real issue, and we have to be aware of it. But all of these things tend to just stop development, which isn't the solution either. We have to manage it and take care of the people who have limited means and make sure they have appropriate, safe, affordable housing that's affordable to them. But we can't stop everything else because we're afraid we're going to gentrify a neighborhood.
Yeah. The bureaucracy of everything also, instead of just slowing things down, stops it. And then it just it makes the problem harder and harder to deal with as time moves on. And I'm involved, like, with my full-time job. We really are trying to raise economic impact in New York State, right? And so a lot of the the land on the commercial and industry side needs to be shovel ready, they say, right? And so, like, I can totally get and understand why, like, trying to build a brand new community, on the outskirts of the suburbs is almost impossible, because some of those, you just take electric, some of the units that they need to put in there have a 3 to 5 year waiting period. They cannot be made fast enough. So trying to add these new towns, is almost impossible. So I don't envy you guys in trying to, like, establish this movement. But can you talk a little bit more about, like, the specifics of this project that you're trying to do, and what are some of the solutions that you think may work?
I mean, it's exciting when you start thinking about it. The biggest, I think, the fastest solution that creates a lot of positive ripples is the independent senior housing. There's an example over by Marketplace Mall. They built, I think it's 180 units, Marketplace senior apartments, and they're income qualified. But the rumor was there were 500 applications sent in before they even opened the application process. The demand is huge. It's not just in subsidized, but it's also in market rate. There's a development going in the town of Victor, or in the village of Victor, that's 112 units, I think, luxury apartments in many cases, but demand is great. And so what we have to realize is that when we create any kind of new housing, people move into it, but they're leaving some other type of housing, and other people can move into these homes that are now vacated. And so they're leaving where they're living, and it creates this 3 or 4 layer ripple effect. So 100 units in Victor may lead to 300 or 400 people getting more appropriate housing. So that's just one piece. Senior living is a big one, but it's also the kind of thing you can put in a retail center. You could take an unused parking lot, like they did in Marketplace, and build 180 units. Nobody is arguing about traffic, because those areas are built for traffic. Nobody's arguing it's destroying their view, because people don't live where they can view the parking lot. So the not in my backyard opposition is a lot of times less. It creates economic activity for the town. A lot of times those are somewhat of an eyesore. And so we need to be more open to surface parking is a big one. There's tons of surface parking that has cracks in it and grass is growing. So let's maybe try and solve the senior housing problem there, which leads to all the movement in the 2 and 3 and 4 bedroom houses in the middle market that are affordable to someone in the, the middle third of the income spectrum. So that's one piece.
And
Go
sorry to
ahead.
interrupt. Aren't they also like making those into little mini community pots too, like where there's, grocery stores and convenience
Mhm.
stores and things like that built into
Yeah,
some of those. Yeah, because I know that
yeah,
is really important to them. Um,
yeah. And you mentioned the food deserts, and one of the solutions to that, a, a real grocery store won't go into an area where there's no business. And
right.
from a business standpoint, you can't blame them. But having more occupants in an area leads to more services, more shops, more retail, food being one of them. One of the things we like to do though is kind of pair solutions. And so if we're building concentrated on a neighborhood and it's nowhere near a grocery store, there's nothing wrong with us partnering with one of these farms that are surrounding our region and saying, hey, how about if we open up a little, retail opportunity for you right in this neighborhood, and once a week a truck comes in from the farm, like a little mini farmers market, and distributes food to the people who live nearby for a low cost. There's so many easy solutions that one of our biggest challenges is just getting people to think in a little different way, uh, and turn the nose into, oh yeah, that would be a great opportunity. Um, it's not hard to solve. We just have to be open to different conversations instead of, ooh, traffic. We're not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting listening to this conversation as someone kind of in that middle place. I have stable housing. I own a house. We've lived in this house. We've owned this house for 23 years. But as we get in further into our 50s, we want a house we can age in a place we want to move into the city. And it's just,
Yeah.
I thought we really were sidelined. We really thought we could do it. And it is mind blowing because you think I've worked so hard to be a good steward to the property that I have. I'm ready to pass it on, but then there's nothing to buy, or it's parallel. Like, why would I live the same kind of house I live in now? So this is very relevant, at least in my life. But I think a lot of people listening, they don't quite understand what the challenges are, and laying that out for a community is very important. It's big work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Jess and I were just honestly chatting on text yesterday because I live so far away from everything. Like I can't just shoot on down for a picnic.
No.
I live over an hour away, and it's a challenge, and we love where we live because we have acreage, and when COVID hit, my friends in LA and New York City were trapped in their studio apartments. I'm hiking around in the woods, but I don't really have that option. Like Christine, like if we were to try to have that conversation about moving into Rochester, it would be near impossible for us like to afford. So I do like hearing that we're trying to find solutions to these
Yeah.
challenges. And if you want to, tell us some more. I mean, I do like the idea of giving, affordable options that are convenient for seniors, but it sounds like there's more to this plan. So I'll let you speak a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. One of the other really interesting solutions is in modular or manufactured housing. We tend to think about, a trailer park from 30 years ago. The manufactured housing is so much nicer now, and many times you can't tell a manufactured or modular home from a stick built home. There are some advantages. They're faster to build. They're built in a factory. They don't get exposed to weather. They don't get rained on. They use a different labor pool than typical construction, and you could have one built and delivered onto your site in 4 months. There's huge capacity to do more of that, and the price range is in a reasonable range. We talk a lot about the most demand in our market is between 150 and 300,000, and you can build a nice, good size modular manufactured home for under 300,000. And those are potentially really great solutions for scattered vacant lots in the city. You can cluster them into little communities where there's more space, but you can do a lot of things with those. And we've been meeting with one developer who can do a 2-story modular that more fits the character of a city street. So we're trying to push that forward. But one of the limiters is the traditional building trades are very, very short on workers. That goes back to the recession in the mid 2000s, never really recovered. But if we're going to build and rehab housing at any kind of scale, we're going to need skilled tradespeople. So one of the things we're also doing is trying to partner the trades training with opportunities to do this work. So one aspect, we're building people into career jobs, but we're also creating housing that they can live in and trying to partner the two. So you're solving two problems at the same time.
That's very cool. And you made me think of there was a show that my wife and daughter were kind of rewatching, Life in Pieces. And there's like a tiny home that their son buys and then like parks it in their backyard.
Yep.
So they still sort of live with them, but they don't live with them. But I know that those are super popular. And I know there was, I'm pretty sure it was an RIT student decided that he didn't want to live on campus because it was too expensive. And over the summer, he like took classes on becoming an electrician and carpenter, and he built his own tiny home, and then just parked it near campus, and that was his off-campus housing.
Yeah,
which is an innovative solution. I know you were talking more about more permanent, like prefabbed homes, and I'm thinking about like how Sears really became a huge, company when you used to be able to buy a home in a catalog, and they like sort of delivered you all the materials and you put
And
it
now
together.
those homes are really, people seek those out because they're
they do.
really interesting part of our history and architecture design.
They're really cool. I've been
Yeah.
in so many. They are so cool. There's a ton in not downtown Rochester, but in the city of Rochester,
Yeah.
and they are really neat.
What's happening now is we're coming up with innovative solutions for our era. In a couple weeks, I have a conference in California, and I'm going to tour a factory that 3D prints homes out of recycled plastic, primarily water bottles.
Yeah.
They're small, 500 to 900 square feet. You can attach 2 or 3 together if you want to. But again, they fit in the price range. They're really neat looking online. I can't wait to walk through one. But the solutions are there. Amazon has a home that it gets shipped to you and you unfold it. You get 2 of your friends over and you unfold it, and it is a house. It's crazy. And the accessory dwelling units is kind of the general category for these, are another really important piece of the solution. So again, think of an independent senior who wants to be close to family, doesn't need a lot of space. 500, 600, 700 square foot unit. If you have acreage, nobody notices it's in your backyard. They're close to family, but independent. Frees up that home that is probably in a really desirable price range. And that's another way to create movement and create choice. There's a lot of times a concern that after that family member passes, what's going to happen to the home? Is it going to be an Airbnb? Is it going to be some college kid who's going to party every night? And so people resist, but there are ways to kind of determine what happens and who's allowed to live there that is, it's good for the community and it's good for everybody. But we have to be open to those things. If we don't, we're going to be subject to the crisis continues, and then we have to grasp at whatever solution is viable. And I don't think that those will be the types of housing that we want to, create or maintain character of neighborhoods. It's going to be, okay, we need to build things in the thousands, and all we can do is big square concrete buildings that no one's going to want to live in.
Compounds.
Exactly.
Go back to what I was saying before. As we delay and delay and delay, it ends up stopping the progress, and then the population increases and the need increases.
Yeah.
So
just speaking to ADUs, the additional dwelling units, that there seems to be a misconception in the community, in the buyers and sellers that I know, is that if somebody has an ADU in their backyard, it's going to be used as an Airbnb or, some kind of short-term housing. And that's not necessarily the case. That's not what people are thinking. They are thinking it's an in-law,
Yeah.
it's for my mother-in-law, it's for my child who's, in their 20s and they need affordable housing, and then they're going to, move on from it. But there is that misconception that I think we really need to keep addressing. These are homes, true homes, and other communities have them and are successful with them. But it's again just addressing that NIMBYism and saying, nope, that's not what these are. These are for our kids, for our community. They're not short term.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you dressing, or is it coming up? I think, again, in my case, like, I think we're surrounded by college students. Do you have plans or thoughts about transient, and you know what I mean, like people who are going to be turning over, renting and moving on, whether that's college students. I think of like short-term jobs
Unemployment,
at
yeah.
different companies or universities. What does that kind of look like in the middle of all this that's going on?
Yeah, that's a good question. That we aren't specifically advocating for housing for that type of transient user, but I think it happens naturally. And one of the contributors to the crisis is out of town corporate landlords buying up single family homes so they can rent them for those kind of purposes. They're very attracted by the average price in our market. If you're in Atlanta and you're used to operating in the DC or Boston or New York area, and the average price is 750, 800, you go to Rochester and it's 230, you go, ooh, great, I can get three for the price of one. So they gobble them up and they turn them to rentals for those kind of purposes. The downside is it limits owner occupant opportunity. Out of town landlords typically don't maintain the homes the same as a local housing provider would. And it just kind of changes things. So we're aware of that, and working with the state, the governor's made a few proposals to limit private equity corporate ownership of single family homes because that's a contributor to the shortage. But we also don't want to stop people from buying homes and providing housing. And a single family home with one person that becomes a home for four college kids or for recent graduates, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a piece of the puzzle. If every home near U of R gets turned to student housing, that's a problem because you have nurses and doctors and traveling people and admin and support staff who want to live close to the hospital. They can't, and that becomes more of a problem. So part of it is build where we can that's close to employment. Part of it is improving transportation so that you can live a little farther away and there's reliable bus service. It all goes together. And that's what makes it complicated is you can solve one or two pieces, but there's usually two or three others that are still somewhat of a limiter.
Yeah,
Sure.
things in moderation, and speaking from the college side of things, and knowing how college kids can be, and stuff. Like, I have friends that live right around the corner from colleges, and it drives them nuts during the school year, having everyone walk downtown and throw stuff in their lawn, or
It's our
just
life.
being
Yeah.
loud. But then you go to the summer and it's a desert, and
Yeah.
everything's dead and no one's there, and so everything in moderation. Like I was saying, we got to find ways to like balance that, and I think that's kind of what you were saying too.
So I'll give you a good example. My dream right now is to have some really impactful, forward-thinking redevelopment of the Psych Center in Rochester near the U of R. If you think of its location, it's close to retail, close to hospital, close to lots of cool stuff. There's tons of space there. There's a 17-floor building that could house hundreds and hundreds of people. And it would be a perfect place for a mix of support staff for the college or the hospital, maybe students, maybe grad students. There's already a senior community right next door. It's on a major bus line. There's so many positives. And the most recent proposal was to put up a small hotel in that area. So we don't need another hotel, and certainly don't need to take prime real estate in the middle of everything that's in a perfect location for so much cool stuff and limit it to that. So those are the kind of things we have to think big, because that could create a very, mixed age, mixed income, mixed everything community that could be like a flagship for the whole region. And what I would love to do is establish that as an option and get people thinking bigger, and then see what they come up with in other locations. There's 3 or 4 that we're looking at and proposing, kind of big dream type developments that would meet lots and lots of needs. And so that's what's exciting about this, is getting people to think, and there are people who are willing to think big, and that's really cool.
Yeah, I know, and not to keep on bringing in Buffalo up, but just because I know they did this. The Hotel Henry was used to be the old psych ward, and that was first phase in a plan of like building things around it too, right? So I do see that as an interesting possibility, and I know I'm very familiar with that property. I go by it all the time. But I know we're coming down to like the last 3 minutes here. I'm sure everybody has things going on after this, so I want to make sure that we, give you kind of an opportunity to say some final thoughts or bring up some things that maybe we haven't talked about yet. This easily could be another episode.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jess or Don, you start.
Yeah, Jim says all the time that the options are there. Candidly speaking, even the money is there. The opposition that we are running into, you spoke earlier, Christine, about the mindset, right? Mindset of the consumer, mindset of the neighbors. We're very fortunate in this initiative that we have very deep, strong relationships with our local, our state, and our federal representatives. And from an advocacy standpoint, Jim and I just spent 6 days in Washington, D.C. at the National Association of Realtors legislative meetings. And we had a meeting with, excuse me, Congressman Joe Morelli. And, when you go to these things, sometimes you have the quote unquote talking points of what, the representative handlers are telling you in advance. This is what, the congressperson would like to talk about. But because of the relationship that Jim has forged with these people, we're able to get right into the nitty gritty. And Joe is intimately aware of what we're doing on a local level. I bumped into him Saturday at an event after DC, and he said, I've got to get on Jim's calendar. So when you've got that level of support coming at us, that's huge. Because again, we know what's going on, boots on the ground. We're in the middle of hopefully negotiating some sort of peace between a particular town on the east side that a builder is looking to put in a huge development, and it's going to slightly impact the traffic pattern. And we were made aware of that, and Jim and I and one of our former board members was on a Zoom last week with one of our state senators because it is in her district. But we have a relationship with one of the other state senators, Jeremy Cooney, who is, the director of the Transportation Committee. So forging these relationships on that level is imperative because we can come up with all of the white paper studies and initiatives and plans and, 3D housing and ADUs and all of that. And the money is there. But the pushback, I think, is crucial to this. And it's ironic because as we talked a lot in DC last week, and that's why my voice is a little off, to your point earlier, Nick, real estate should not be a political issue. This should be a purple issue, not blue, not red, because everybody needs housing. And the markets are different across the country, but it's a basic human need and human right. So that's what we're working towards.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both.
And I would just say, I would love the Rochester Finger Lakes region to be a place where everybody feels like they actually do have a chance to become an owner and create stability, start building wealth, be part of this community on a long-term basis. If we continue to let people just be renters, it actually hurts our long-term economic viability because one little downturn and all those renters can move to North Carolina or Texas or Georgia or wherever there's a job.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy for us either. So it's really important that we provide opportunities for people to put down roots, create good trades jobs for people who stay here, to create more housing, which helps moderate prices, which makes it more accessible. We can create a virtual spiral instead of a downward spiral.
Nice.
Very nice. Jess, anything else that you want to throw in there?
No, thank you. I'm just excited to be a part of this and in the real estate community. And I that's basically it. I feel really proud to be part of the Greater Rochester Association. It really is truly, we are at the forefront, and that makes me very proud.
Yeah, well, you guys are all working really hard towards making Rochester and the 585 a better and more terrific place. And I will say that I urge our listeners and really anyone else to look into this. And we're going to have the links in the notes for you to go and before you make a decision to go to a town hall meeting and argue against something or for something, do some research and really look into the facts, because I think you'd be surprised to see some of the answers that you uncover when you actually do that and don't just react to the hype that you might see on social. All right. So I think we're way too quick to make decisions without any kind of basis for fact. So Jem, Don, Jess, thanks so much for being on That Sounds Terrific in the 585 and for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of That Sounds Terrific in the 585. Check out our website, www.thatsoundsterrific.com, to see a full list of episodes and learn more about our hosts, Nick Koziel and Christine Green. Be sure to find us on your favorite social media platforms or podcast listening service by searching That Sounds Terrific, and feel free to give us a 5-star rating if you enjoy our show. Until next time.